So this is a real networking event. So we will actually network rather than present, or rather, we will present very briefly. That depends on the speakers, but then we're going to talk more and sort of basically in the room. So for the people in the webinar, it will be very boring after the presentations, but for the people here, it will be wonderful after the presentations. Yeah. Of course, all of us who are going to talk could talk for days and hours and whatever about the topic, and that's what we want to see. The important thing is that you chase somebody at the end and talk to them about what you think. That's basically what we're going to do. It's really important that you register in the list at the entrance, because we're going to be sending you a link with all the presentations, and also because we take a lot very seriously what WUF asks us. So then they want us to send a report on what happened, and we're going to send you a survey to say everything was wonderful or we hated it or something. That's basically the logistics of the whole thing. Thank you for coming. Thank you to all the organizations who agreed to come and present. I'm Carlos Pardo, in case I didn't present myself. I'm from Despacio, which is an NGO research center in Colombia. So I'm living exactly there. If you go straight down there, that's my home. That's where I'm coming from, but no longer with jet lag as some of you. So I hope you don't fall asleep. The idea behind this is actually something that comes from previous WUFs. So in Naples, we did our first training course in slow cities. Then in Medellin, we did 13 events in Medellin, a little bit of an overkill. And we implemented a bikeway at the same time, which was, I think, the first Habitat village. I'm very proud to have organized it for UN Habitat. And then in Quito, we did this. What's there? And it's all in the framework of the slower cities. But then what we did now is put it within the broader framework of the new urban agenda, and we're trying to sort of understand what is the role of going in at appropriate speed. So I'm going to be doing a very short presentation once we have a little bit more of momentum inside the room, but then we're going to have other opportunities during the week. There's some material at the entrance if you want to take. If you brought something that you want to share with people, just leave it there or give it to people. I mean, I'm very happy to have people networking as well. And I guess that's it for the introductions. So this is basically the organization. I was very kind to put everybody's Twitter there, because then we need to have everybody's Twitter, because otherwise we do not exist. And the important thing is that when somebody else is going to talk, then I'll project their Twitter again. Some of the presentations already have it, but you can start getting everybody's Twitter and then tweeting this wonderful event. What's important is if you take a picture, please be sure to not show the empty seats. Show the full seats. And for those of you who are far away, you can come closer. I will not splash water onto you. So this is my Twitter, and this is the organization I work in, which is Despacio. It has 2 E's, the Twitter, because the Despacio one with 1 E was already taken. And so, yeah, it was easier because otherwise it was too long or you have to put something else. So it was weird. Yeah, that's it. I don't remember if I had anything else to say. Okay, so each of us will have 5 minutes to talk. And I have this thing which tells me when the 5 minutes are up. That's why I don't want to start just yet, because then my 5 minutes are over and I want a little bit more people to be here. Okay, but yeah, let's start. This is the main problem, that when we say we have to go slower, then people say slower than this, and then they don't understand. Like, what are you proposing? That we do reverse mobility or something? And then it's a little bit weird. But there's a full explanation on that. It's basically people are thinking about average speeds and not the limiting of the maximum speed. That's basically the misunderstanding. because at the same time you see other people going too fast, or faster than cars, or something like that. So then this is sort of what we have to start understanding. And then in addition to that, we have to start to understand how can we find that right balance, and how can we get to a point where we're going not so fast but not so slow, and that everybody's going at a more coherent and sort of the same speed in the end. So there's basically 5 problems. We're accelerating too much. Accelerating, that's the key thing. We're going past the speed limits. We're not increasing our average speeds. We are killing people, we're segregating people, and we are creating worse cities. It's really bold, and it's sort of, it's not a nice thing to say that we're killing people, but when a country says that more than one plane is falling every year and people are dying, people think that it's horrible, but then that's what's happening in the roads. Many different planes are falling. It's the equivalent of that. And then speed has a lot to do with that. This is also the very direct way of showing what it means to go very fast and run over a pedestrian. This is, we actually did this in Bogota. We put a mannequin there. They dressed him as me. You can see it, and then they put in my hair and then my beard and everything. And then they put him there and said, okay, if he falls from this 9th floor, then he's going, it's as if somebody would run him over at 80 kilometers an hour. Yeah, that's what's really bad. If he falls it from the 6th floor, then it's 65 kilometers an hour. 4th floor, it's 50 kilometers an hour. It's fine. The 2nd floor, I mean, some bruises, and then hopefully he won't hurt his head or anything. But this is exactly the same, and this is the way that we should understand it. It's like falling from a certain floor of very great height. And this is what's happening to many people in the world, and that's why we're killing them. And this is the type of city that we end up having. So we have to fix this. And I only have 2 more minutes and 30 slides to go. So what I did is that I have this leaflet. It's illegal in the WUF to have paper, but I printed something and it's over there. But just hide it somewhere. And that says very, very briefly, based on these commitments of the new urban agenda implementation, how do we go slower? Yeah, we have to go slower. I mean, slower than what we're going. And it can be done with a lot of things. It can be done with policies, with regulations, with enforcement, with design, with guidelines. More importantly, implementing something, because when we say we have to go slower and do nothing, then it's pretty much ridiculous. But we have to implement things. And we have to educate the drivers. And we have to have 30 kilometers an hour, 50 kilometers an hour in cities. Going beyond 50 kilometers an hour is just useless. So we've done a little bit of this. And then this is an ice cream guy, a government employee, and my bicycle painting a road so that we could redesign this road. This was what it ended up being. This is the World Urban Forum in Medellin. You can clap your hands whenever you want. These wonderful things that we're doing. Then we went to Quito, and then we said we can do something like this. And it didn't come out like this exactly, but more or less, like we did a nice thing, and people were very happy. This is before and after. I call every month and say, have they put another graffiti there? I want to know how long it takes. I don't get any answers. And then in Bogota, last week we did this, which was redesigning a street just with paint. And it seems to be going well. I wasn't there. I was coming here, so I couldn't participate in that. And we monitor all these things, and we find that it's really working. But in the end, what we see is that there's cities, including Kuala Lumpur, this is pretty near here, that are already going slow. And it's fine, and people are happy, and they eat stuff, and they walk. And it's a little bit unexpected, but it does work, and it does happen. So it's the type of thing that we would like to have. I'm right on time. How do you turn this off? Okay, so that's me. And then I'm going to have Mark give his presentation now from Slowcut. For those of you who are arriving, don't forget to write your email in the list in the entrance, please. And then I give the floor to Mark. If you want to use the microphone, but I think we're fine.
No, I think if it worked for you, it'll work for me. So thank you very much, Carlos, and good morning all. My name is Mark Major. I'm the Senior Advisor with the Partnership on Sustainable Low Carbon Transport, which everyone calls SLOCAT, which is quite appropriate today. I only really have one slide, so don't get worried. And I'll spend my 5 minutes talking about my one slide, really. SLOCAT is, actually I have 2 slides. I was teaching. This is just the introduction. So we work on behalf of 90 global organizations, and we have this common interest in promoting sustainable low carbon transport at the global level. And so many of our organizations, some of which are here today, WRI, Despacio, ITPP, UN Habitat, I see many people here in the room. So we work together on this common endeavor to promote sustainable low carbon transport. What is important to note here is that we have very small organizations that maybe just have a few people with very limited kind of financial resources. And we have members like the European Investment Bank, which is 3 times bigger than the World Bank. So we have really a range of organizations covering all modes of transport, working in all different parts of the world, doing all different kinds of activities. From a company like Doppelmayr, who are fabricating and operating cable car systems, to organizations that are working purely transport environment on analysing European policy developments. So very different types and very different scale. And I think this is so this is my real slide. So as I said, what we're doing is we're promoting sustainable low carbon transport. And I think there's a word that Carlos didn't use, which I think is important in this discussion, is to talk about efficiency. So we're wanting to maximize the accessibility of cities, to maximize access of people to economic, social, and economic opportunities. And this involves making efficient use of space as well as energy. And so I think there's a very strong argument in terms of favour of public transport, walking and cycling, this is just the most efficient way to move people and get people and give this access. So when you see these graphs about how many people per hour you can move per lane, these are the modes that are winning. And I think this efficiency argument, we need to use space efficiently. Space is the most valuable resource in a city. I see cities as machines for accessibility. The reason cities exist is they give us better access to opportunities, experiences, people and places. And so when cities are congested or blocked, they're failing in their very essential purpose. All great cities have great access. And I think that's not a coincidence. And so if you see cities as machines for accessibility, this is where we should put the emphasis. And of course, we mix these things, not just efficient, we're also talking about safe transport and clean and affordable transport. This is also a very important point. If you think about providing access to some of the poorer people that currently, as Carlos explained in his picture, suffer from the worst conditions. And this is, for me, is a key part of the development agenda and the new urban agenda, is making sure we deliver access for all. And that involves giving some special attention to the people that currently have limited access. And I think it's also important to think about that the reason people are disadvantaged, if you think about disadvantaged groups, often it's because of lack of access that actually is the cause of disadvantage. It's not like they're in this situation de facto and we need to do something about it. A lack of access to education or economic opportunities or training or jobs is often the cause of this disadvantage. So we can turn that around as well. Another thing I want to talk about, I've only really got 1.5 minutes left. Wow. Is that there's a huge discussion at the moment, a lot of energy and interest in this electric cars. I mean, people are really, really excited about this and there's lots of interest. Now, I have some concern about this. We had this recent celebration that we've now reached 2 million electric car fleets in the world. Like that was some huge achievement. Actually, the big story is that there's 200 million electric vehicles running now on the streets in China. So these are electric bikes, small electric two-wheel vehicles. This is what's changing the face of Chinese cities in terms of space, in terms of affordability, in terms of traffic flows. So I think we need to be thinking about not just improving existing technologies, existing concepts of vehicles, but also actually thinking about shifting to other modes of transport and avoiding transport itself. So in our work, we're trying to make a balanced approach to this 3 dimensions. I mean, there's a lot of energy going into this improved strategies, new types of fuels, new types of vehicles, but actually we need to make sure there's a balanced argument. Avoid and shift are equally important. And we see that if you want to achieve global objectives, you need to have all 3. We're doing this by promoting a vision for the transformation of transport by 2050, an integrated vision. We call this the Global Macro Roadmap. So we know we've kind of agreed where we need to be. How do we get there? And we've broken that down into transforming cities, transforming fuels, transforming vehicles, transforming supply chains, etc., etc. So, I mean, one thing is having this idea, it's like pragmatically, and we're on the 3rd version of that now. The last thing I want to say is it's important how we do this. We do this by working on evidence. So, you know, if you're going to tell me that this new vehicle is going to be solving these problems, show me the evidence. We work, because I emphasize the diversity of the 90 members, because we work in consensus with them. So this already gives some kind of tensions between our messages, is that everyone has to be happy and we have to be, and this is, as I say, we treat the big ones fairly. And we do that by having an independent impartiality committee. So we do as an equal job, I hope, representing the interests of an organisation like Despacio, a smaller organisation, and their interests, as we do with the European Investment Bank. And we can justify that by having an impartiality committee to make sure we represent these fairly. So my last message before we go on is that I think you need to be extremely cautious in all these discussions about incumbent interests. There's incumbent political, economic and industrial interests with an interest in maintaining the status quo and defining the discussion in a certain way. Ask for the evidence, be open, and thank you for the time. I'm very sorry I went over. I'm sure that must be Colombian seconds.
Yeah, then it would be longer. Okay, thank you, Mark, for that. And now we have Salvador, who's coming from WUF9 to give his 5-minute presentation.
Well, thank you very much. My name is Salvador Herrera. I am a member of the WUF9 Foundation. We are very passionate about working. We're using these 5 minutes just to send 3 messages to you. We suppose that you're coming here to enjoy the ease of movement that walking provides. And we want this movement to be guaranteed for that number of people living worldwide. We are so surprised that although everybody, like in general terms, walks in the world, the conditions for walking are so unsafe in many countries. Just, for example, reaching this place, you can still, although this is a developed city, there are still constraints for walking. So it happens everywhere, it happens to anyone. And that's why we're sending this second message. We want you to join us, if you want, to this global sidewalk challenge that WUF9 Foundation is launching worldwide. It already has the support of several organizations like the World Health Organization and others. And it aims to build 100,000 miles of safe sidewalks around the world. It aims to include and have different municipalities join this challenge and build their sidewalks according to the parameters of safety and other elements around walking. It's a small number considering the challenge worldwide, but at least it's a fixed number that we can track. Among other WUF9 features, we have a walking tracker of how people walk around the world. We're planning to use this tool in relation to this global sidewalk challenge. Remember, 100,000 miles of sidewalks by 2030, in relation also to the SDGs goals. Finally, you're all welcome to join us and discuss more thoroughly walking in Bogota this October this year. We're honored to be collaborating with the city of Bogota, with its mayor, Peñalosa, in WUF9 Bogota. This is an international conference that happens every year. and it covers a wide array of topics around walking. It welcomes papers. You can look for the guidelines on that website, and the call for proposals is open until mid-March. And we're very eager to see what your perspective about walking is, your ideas, and how they can relate to the global walking challenge we are launching. So thank you very much, and enjoy walking. Thank you.
Thank you for taking back the minute that Mark took. I'm too stressed about time. So we're going to have Robin from WRI, who's going to give us a presentation on this work.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm going to talk about safe and sustainable speeds and some work that we've been doing through the Embark line of work at the World Resources Institute. This is work that has been supported by Bloomberg Philanthropies and the FIA Foundation. And we're going to present several conclusions that come from a couple basic knowledge products that we have that I can talk about with you later and that are available on our website. So the first is that people are vulnerable. People make mistakes. And even if we're trying not to make mistakes, it happens. And as a result, we need to design not for perfection, not like we're going to drive and no problems are going to result, but we need to have systems and roads and cities that are designed to allow us to move at safe speeds. So we see that humans make errors, that we're vulnerable to injury. We think that responsibility is shared. It shouldn't be thought that when there's an accident between a pedestrian and a car, it's always the pedestrian's fault or always the biker's fault. It's between a bike and a motorized vehicle. It goes to the principle also that no death or serious injury is acceptable. So we're really moving towards vision zero, and we want to be sort of proactive, not just reactive in how we work. Some of the core elements, because we want this to be evidence-based, are economic analysis, priorities and planning, monitoring and evaluation, comprehensive governance and management, and very strong targets and data. And there are lots of different action areas. This is not just about traffic engineering, right? It's about how we design and live in our cities and making sure that we think about that beforehand, that we try to encourage interaction with people and with economic activity, but that then we also plan for emergencies and emergency response. So the first thing we need to do is set safe speed limits for all road users, not just for vehicles. And this sort of is in line with what Carlos mentioned earlier. Here are some specific figures that I don't have time to talk about. Second, we want to promote and enforce speed limits. That promoting is wonderful, but enforcement is a really key piece of it. And unless we are serious about enforcing, it sometimes is counterproductive to have speed limits that sort of are viewed as something that can just be not paid attention to anywhere. Thirdly, you want to design streets for their speed limits. And these are some of the different ways that cities can be safer by design to slow us down and not speed us up. Fourth, you want to make sure that you get communities on board. This is something that we want to do together. It shouldn't be something that people view as imposed upon them, but work together to come and transform our area, similar, again, to sort of some of the work that Despacio and ITDP have done in other places, of doing before and after, getting folks involved in how we can actually redesign our cities through little interventions that can make a huge difference. So we do, we work with cities, but we also do a lot of knowledge products. And these are two of the most recent ones that we have. One is called Cities Safer by Design, and it really looks at roads and traffic in sort of mobility infrastructure within a broader city. And the more recent one that just came out a couple weeks ago is called Sustainable and Safe. That is a vision and guidance for zero road deaths. The City Safer by Design is available in about 10 languages on the WRI website. This one I think is still only available in English, but it will come out in other languages sometime soon. And so I look forward to talking to you afterwards when we've got more time about some of these details. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, exactly. It's not that you don't have enough time, but you have a lot of time, but after.
Time to talk afterwards.
Yeah, thank you, great. Okay, this is just so that people start to think what they're going to ask them later. I understand Shreya is taking a while to complete her presentation, so then we'll give the floor to Beatrice from EcoMobility. Sorry, in the beginning.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Beatrice from the EcoMobility team of World Secretariat that's based in Bonn, Germany. As you may already notice from my accent, I'm actually from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and I only live 20 minutes away from here. If there's no traffic jam, on an unlucky day, it can take up to 2 hours. And what I mean by unlucky day is it rains at 5 p.m. on a weekday. So, and Kuala Lumpur is such a rapidly growing city. Like just within half a year, when the last time I came back, I saw that somewhere near my neighborhood, the whole entire area, which was for hawker centers and convenience store, was totally removed and make way for condominiums, 2 blocks of condominiums in addition to the new one that was just completed last year. So with higher population density at this residential area, what do? They build another highway. So does that really solve the problem? But Kuala Lumpur has also made tremendous progress. You may have also noticed the MRT system that's up and running. We also have BRT in Sunway, and we are also going to commission the new cycling lane. But the problem is that while all this progress is apparent, what happens is people do not switch to this mode. And so how do we actually encourage people to switch towards more integrated mode? And we at EcoMobility, we have this EcoMobility. One of our agenda is to work towards cities, work with cities towards sustainable urban mobility or EcoMobility. And what we think is prioritizing walking, cycling, public transport, and other use of innovative shared and electric vehicles. And it is very important that mobility is connected and integrated. It is not enough to just avoid, shift, and improve, but it is not integrated, because this is the way how people would actually shift towards this kind of slow eco-mobile transport modes. And within our initiative, what we have, one of the things that we have is a tool to measure the performance of cities with regard to their urban mobility system. And this is what we call as eco-mobility shift. And the second thing that we also have is the EcoMobility World Festival. It is held once every 2 years, and what it is about demarcating one section of a neighborhood within a real city at a real time, and to show how eco-mobility can come into play in real life. So, and a very good example of what actually, how a city actually moved towards slowing speed and move towards eco-mobility was city of Kaohsiung, which was the host of the festival last year, and it is also the second biggest city in Taiwan. So what happened is that in order to reorientate the city to its people, one major thing that they have to do is to change the mindset and the behavior of people through participatory governance. It is impossible for people to move towards this without extensive engagement, extensive talking to them, educating to people through all walks of life. And besides that, improving the physical environment and the transportation system. The goal is actually to improve the environment in order for multimodal transportation system, because good urban design inevitably will nudge people towards good behavior. And so this is very interrelated kind of linkages. And it is also not enough to just focus on the public, the physical environment and the transportation system while neglecting the whole entire social system, by understanding what actually the people want and how do you, what do they need before you invest heavily on the physical transportation system. So this was what Kaohsiung has done based on a 3D policy, and one of it is decreasing the speeds of mobility. And the results are very apparent. You can see significant increase of usage in eco-mobile modes of transport. And what is more important as we walk in the streets, talking to the people about their experience, is that while of course there are mixed responses, but one very apparent pattern is a lot of these voices are unheard. The voices of the disabled people, the children, the elderly people, these voices are always unheard because they are always overwhelmed by the louder voices of the business owners and things like that. And how their experience is that they are the ones who want to embrace this this alternative scenario, and they are the ones who wants to maintain this for the future. So it is definitely needed for us to slow speed in cities in order for the vulnerable communities. And so if you would like to know more about our initiatives and our program, I'll be really glad to talk to you later. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. And now we're going to have Mariana from Ocupa Tu Calle or Lima Como Vamos, or both, but she'll explain. So both things.
Gracias. Hello everyone, I'm Mariana Alegre from Lima, Peru. From Lima Como Vamos, and Ocupa Tu Calle is a project within Lima Como Vamos, which is also in Colombia and in other cities in Latin America. So talking about slow and knowing what Carlos Felipe is doing in Latin America is quite inspiring, but also is quite a challenge, not only because of the transportation modes that we try to use mostly, but also to try to get it as a philosophy of living. I don't know, but I, like 3 years ago, started like taking things slowly, calmly, trying to be mindful, starting to making yoga, which I nailed it. I'm now 1 year on a row. And it's quite difficult also in a high and fast-paced world with lots of responsibilities on job and whatever. So what can we do with our ideas of getting slow, but actually not having slow places to be? So Ocupa Tu Calle, which is a project of recovering public spaces, like the ones that Carlos Felipe has shown you in his presentation, start making these changes, and suddenly we discovered that we are also helping to make the city slow. So we have, for example, this space, and we turn it into this space. And it's just with reclaimed wood and stuff that also is like garbage for us it's not. And with that idea, we start seeing how people act and react within the new public spaces that we were creating and we were helping to foster. So, for example, we find this guy. He was just reading a newspaper, and it was really, really hard to take the picture. It was one of the teachers that worked within the project that was like for 1 hour trying to get the right picture without interrupting him and his slowness process. But that's the kind of situation that we need to be promoting from, even if we are trying to promote, of course, safety in our streets, but also if we're trying to walk to some other place, we need like this kind of islands, an oasis in the middle of the jungle. So here we have another example. This little girl is making her homework in this bus stop. She actually lives in front of the space. But the mother was not very happy of the new space there because it was taking productive space for selling goods from the commercial and informal commercial merchants in the area. So again, we start facing these kind of challenges. She was quite happy and using the space, and it's good. We have it is like a really, really good photo, and we actually use it in our brochure that you can find here later. But what about the other people? They also need spaces. They also need time. So we need to start balancing that, and that's hard. And also we try with the processes, we try to switch the minds of our policymakers and of course our society that were too keen on putting these horrible signs all over the grass and the green area saying it's not allowed to step on the grass. And I hate those signs. So we start changing them, and we start putting this kind of signs all over our spaces because people were not sure that they are able to actually sit down and not paying for nothing and just relax. So we start changing them, and the minute that we start putting that sign in our first intervention, people start actually using it. And I was thinking that it was like a joke because when we just set up the first intervention, no one was using it besides me and my team. So it was like this game of like when you put your feet and then you put it out. Okay, so kind of that with the space until we put the sign. People actually think that they need to pay for being there. So that's the idea of also shifting how our conceptions are on how the city is or it is not a public good, or that we are citizens and not customers. And this kind of situation is also hard to fight for, and it requires probably not a slow approach, but a quick one, because we need to be hard and aggressive to try to prevent that kind of situation. So thank you very much, Carlos. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. So now we should have Shreya, who's reluctant to copy the presentation, but I'm sure she'll do it. And then from then we can go to the networking. Yeah, this is Shreya. It's coming. Yeah, for those of you who haven't signed, please remember to sign your name in the entrance so that we can send you a link later to the presentations and we can start.
I can wait, and my computer doesn't work.
Okay.
Find your drive. What do I do?
You can talk for 5 minutes then. Yeah?
Just looking at another drive.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay, so while Shreya can fix this, then maybe I can show you people's Twitter accounts and just describe a little bit better what we're doing for those of you who have arrived later. Basically, what we're going to do is, once we finish with the presentations, we're going to be splitting into, well, not groups, but just presenters are going to be sitting around the room. And then you can ask them everything that you wanted to ask them. And we don't need a microphone and we don't need to be organized. We just need to talk to people. Because when they say we're going to do networking events, then I said, well, we do a networking event so that people can actually network. There's material in the back from some of the organizations that you can take away from your site. And then I also invite you to go to the websites, because what Robin has been presenting is in PDF. What I have been presenting, well, we also have PDFs of all our publications. Slowcat has many hundreds of documents in their website as well, and then WUF9 is also very useful, and as well as EcoMobility. And maybe Shreya will present some of this, but then there is a TOD standard in the back. There's some copies actually printed, that's also in PDF. Ready?
I'm sorry, but I need to restart my computer. I'll be there.
Okay. Okay.
2 minutes. Just keep going.
Okay. So what else should I tell you? Okay, so I'm going to move forward in the presentation I had prepared for the end of this. A little bit more background is in this presentation that I'm embarrassed to show my own picture, but there is a presentation on speed and urban development. And I actually found out that they're projecting it in this nice little cube downstairs in the exhibition. I haven't been able to see it, but it would be nice to see myself and then take my picture. But in the meantime, then you can go and then see it. It would be nice so that you can see. For those in the webinar, then they can go to the link and look at this. And also, we have UN Habitat. They are having this special session on mobility, which is the urban mobility and safe and accessible transport for all, which is going to happen on Sunday, and where we're going to talk about more of these issues. And maybe another thing that is useful to mention is that there is a full list of events related to mobility or to sustainable transport in the back, and then also organized by Slowcat and all the different members of Slowcat. If you follow that list, then you have one thing to do all the time. So if you're a freak of mobility, please do that list and then go after it. Okay.
Sometimes
Yeah.
it doesn't.
Okay. So should it be the most recent one?
It should be. It's going to Despacio. WUF.
This one?
Yep.
Okay, so I'll
So
copy it.
the font's gone, I think. That's okay. Oh,
Okay, so you have to use this to,
this doesn't work. The clicker doesn't work.
because there's only one USB.
That's fine.
Okay?
That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So very good morning, and sorry for those technology problems and my own problems. So thank you, Carlos, for inviting me to present at this venue. It's always fun to be working with you and to talk about something that I really care, which is walking and making cities for people. And this presentation is about creating those cities for people. But before we go to people, let's talk about birds. Shall we? So when I say birds, what do you think? What do you think? Fly? Yeah? And when I say fish, what do you think? Swim. And when I say man, what do you think? Exactly, man was born to walk. And not just man, women too. So all of us were made to walk. Imagine, I was just thinking this morning that if birds were in a quote unquote advanced developed world, what would they do? They would fly in aeroplanes. Bizarre as that might sound, that's exactly what we do. Instead of walking, we get moved from place to place in tons of steel, often us alone sitting in that ton of steel. So we need to do something about this, right? So I had shown this picture yesterday, and that's India. That's pretty much what many Indian cities are like. People walk. Nearly half the trips in the city are made on foot. At the very least, a third of the trips, but many times half of the trips. But we don't have any footpaths. We don't make cities for people. And that's not just India. It's actually true for most of the world. A lot of people are on cycles, more than on cars, no cycle tracks, 30% of trips on public transportation, but barely any buses. And all that we care about are personal motor vehicles. That's all that we want to do. And then when it comes to women, 9 out of 10 women actually are using either walk or using public transportation in India. And that's probably true in many, many places in the world. And we just don't care about it. So we don't care what women need. And I often say that we actually create cities for women and for children and for the elderly. We've actually have made a city that's good for all. That's where we need to start. But that's the footpath we make. That's very common because we don't make footpaths, we actually make drain covers. That's what we do. Or actually we make them because we did not win the last Olympics race. So we can practice. We can do the hurdles race. Let's change tracks. Let's talk about air crashes, shall we? Now, the last time a Malaysian, and I'm actually sitting in Malaysia right now, the last time a Malaysian Airlines aircraft vanished, the whole world talked about it for months. They're actually talking about it still. But imagine, in India, actually, every year we have 500 plane crashes in our cities, or the equivalent of 500 air crashes in Indian cities, because something like 80,000 people die on Indian urban streets, and 150,000 people die across the country. So that's the equivalent of 500 crashes, and nobody talks about it. Why? Because we don't care for people. All that we care about is to build cities for cars. That's all that we care about. So here's a very interesting graphic. This is about how much you see when you're driving on a street. If you were to drive somewhere in the range of 10 to 25 kilometers an hour, that's how much you see. The minute it goes a little up, from 30 to 45 kilometers, you start seeing less. And then you start seeing even less. And then you start seeing even less. So what do you think would happen if someone were to cross here? The car doesn't see the person. And not only does the car not see the person, it's almost certain that that person's going to die, because this is what statistics tell us. That's a very nice graphic created by Copenhagenese, that if you actually had an impact at over 60 kilometers per hour, you're certain to die. And if that impact was at under 30 kilometers per hour, you're certain to live. So what's the right speed for our cities? 60. Because that's what we create. If not, why would we create our cities for 60 kilometers per hour and not at 30 kilometers per hour? So we need to think about it. We need to slow down. And that's what this whole presentation or this session is about. We need to create cities for people. But we don't. we often ask ourselves, where's the space for a footpath? Truth is, that's the space for the footpath. People are already walking there, you better make a footpath there. I'm going to finish.
Yeah. Soon.
Or we actually create nice barriers like these. You want to see a close-up? Fun, isn't it? And that's not one place. That's everywhere in the developing world. We create these meter-high barriers that people still have to cross. So what do? They jump across as if they're sprinters. Like, look at women jumping across and men. But I'm guessing old people just can't. It's only the able-bodied who can do that. So we need to do something about it. Or we create pieces of infrastructure which are called footbridges, but they actually are not for people who walk. Footbridges are pieces of car infrastructure because we don't want to stop cars from stopping. The cars need to keep moving. So what if people have to climb? So next time somebody tells you a foot over bridge is a piece of pedestrian infrastructure, slap them. Seriously. So one of the cities that we've been working with, Chennai, and some of you probably have seen this yesterday, have footpaths like these. And they're not footpaths. They're, as I said, often drain covers or places for placing electricity boxes or for placing motorcycles. But at some point, Chennai decided that's not the future it wants. This is the future it wants. So it adopted a non-motorized transportation policy which says people come first, people come before cars, and we want to slow down, and we want to make city for people. And it's actually building hundreds of kilometers of these streets with better footpaths so that people can walk. It's now starting a parking management system across the city so that motorcycles and cars don't start parking on top of footpaths. And you ensure that there's continuity of footpaths even when you have entrances and you have crossings. We actually, when the city at one point started creating these barriers, we went to the media and showed them how children are at danger because of these barriers. And then the next evening, they started creating zebra crossings instead, and in nice, colorful ways. I'm sorry I don't have a picture, but I'll probably that's what I was looking for, and that's why I was dealing with it this morning. And then there are parts of the city where they're pedestrianizing it. That's the city center called Pondi Bazaar, and it's getting pedestrianized, 2.5 kilometers, and then pedestrian priority around in the whole area. And other cities like Coimbatore are now in the process of doing that same thing, creating wide, nice footpaths, pedestrianizing certain areas of the city so that people come first. And even the intersections are getting more compact so that they become safer for people so that they can cross. And that's actually happening. This is a trial run that was done before the actual construction started in Coimbatore. And nice, fun, happy things. Like, why are zebra crossings only supposed to be in white? Why can't they be in yellow, green, and blue and whatnot? Just make it fun. That's what it's all about. It's actually having fun. When you create great footpaths, people have fun. People enjoy. People live. People slow down. People sit. They think. And Pune, also another city which we are working with, is creating hundreds of kilometers of great footpaths. And these have also informed the guidelines that the city adopted, which we have created, are now also being adopted at the national level by the Indian Roads Congress. Some ideas of what they are. It's about ensuring that there's always a slow space in a street. In small streets, the entire street is a slow space. In large streets, you definitely have to have slow space at the edges. There are things like how the footpath should be designed, etc., various guidelines. I don't want to get into the details, but also ensuring that there are crosswalks. We need to have crosswalks in smaller streets every 50 meters, in larger streets at least every 150 to 200 meters. Because if we don't, we actually create barriers. Flyovers are like that. Flyovers are maybe connectors for a few, but they're barriers for the majority. So let's stop building flyovers. Learn that you can't cure obesity with bigger pants. You really can't. And so we need to get fitter, and walking does that for us. Some guidelines that you can download that ITDP has created, the Better Streets, Better Cities Manual for street design. This is being now adopted by multiple places across the world. It's been translated into multiple languages. Please feel free to pick it up. There's a small little brochure which gives you a QR code, which you can download it with. A smaller booklet on footpath design specifically. There's now also a footpath implementation manual that we've come up with. So how do you go step by step in creating it? And also parking, which is such an important issue. Let's make cities for people. Thanks.
Good.
Just can you put that back once? Just once. And you can also pick up this presentation, and there's a whole list of documents that you could download, so easily accessible in electronic form.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we can network. So as I was saying before, then basically what we're going to do is that we're going to have the presenters be in different places of the room. Choose your places now, and I have a few rules to the way that it's going to work. First of all, you have to stand up. Then you have to look for a speaker that you say, "This was so wonderful, and they didn't give you enough time. It's unfair. Can you please explain?" Because exactly what you want to do. And then I'm sure that all the presenters had 100 slides, and when they saw my email and I said you will not have more than 5 minutes, then they can show you that longer presentation. Talk to them more in depth, and then you can ask them the difficult questions. And if by the end you get to know at least 3 people, then we have all succeeded. I have to remind you that there is a list of your names and emails so that I can send you the link to the presentations. And at the end, we're going to do a survey that we're going to be having in a link. So in case you don't know what to look for project partners, so people with whom you may be able to do projects. Look for people to give you money. I will not. I'm actually looking for money. If anybody can raise their hand and tell me I would like to finance all of you. Or just give information, receive information, or give knowledge or receive knowledge. So now we have the chance to talk to the speakers, and you don't need a microphone. You can just start talking. So look for them and let's use the time. So people in the webinar, I think you can leave because I don't see much more you could do. Nice. Thank you very much for being here.